There are just three words, three simple words that your parents might have said when you were a child. And these three words, they changed who you would become, forever. They're not swear words. They're not insults. In fact, they seem completely harmless, but Carl Jung discovered that these three words are capable of permanently damaging a child's psychological framework. And what's even more disturbing, your parents probably said these words, thinking they were helping you, thinking they were teaching you a lesson, thinking they were doing what was best for you. They had no idea what they were really doing. Today, I'm going to reveal what these three words are, how they operate within your psyche, and why millions of adults still hear these words inside their own heads. The voice that criticizes you, the voice that tells you you're not good enough, the voice that paralyzes you before you even try anything new. That voice, it was installed in your childhood. And these three words, they were the access code. Stick with me until the end, because besides revealing the words, I'm going to show you how to finally uninstall this programming. Before we start, I need you to understand something fundamental about how language affects a child. Jung discovered that a child's psyche is extraordinarily porous. A child has no filters. They can't separate what's true from what's just an opinion. When an adult tells a child something, they accept it as fact, as reality, as absolute truth about the world and about themselves. And when that adult is their mother or father, figures who represent safety, authority, reality itself, the impact is even greater. A child literally builds their identity based on the words they hear from their parents. If their parents say, "You're smart," the child sees themselves as smart. If their parents say, "You're dumb," the child sees themselves as dumb. There's no questioning it. There's no critical analysis, and there's just total absorption. And here's the problem. There are words that seem neutral, that even seem positive in a certain context, but they carry devastating, hidden messages, messages that the child absorbs without even realizing it. And these messages, they become part of their internal programming. Let's get to the first word. Actually, it's a short phrase, three words. I'm disappointed in you. Seems simple, right? It even seems like a form of feedback, a way to tell the child that they didn't meet an expectation. Many parents use this phrase, thinking they're motivating their child to do better, to try harder, to reach their potential. But look at what really happens in the child's psyche. When a parent says, "I'm disappointed in you," the child doesn't hear, "You did something that disappointed me." The child hears, You as a person, you as a being, are a disappointment to me." The failure isn't in the behavior. The failure is in their very existence. And there's more. The word disappointed carries immense emotional weight. To disappoint means to shatter a hope. It means to fail someone who trusted you. It means to be less than you should be. When a child hears that they disappoint their parents, they internalize the message. I am a disappointment. My existence is a disappointment. I'm not what I should be. Jung called this introjection. The child introjects. In other words, they swallow whole the parent's evaluation, and that evaluation, it becomes part of their internal dialogue, of the voice that they hear inside their own head for the rest of their lives. I once met a man named Michael, 47 years old, a doctor with 3 specialties, respected by his colleagues, seemingly a picture of success. But he came to me because he couldn't feel satisfaction with anything. Each achievement was immediately followed by the next goal. There was never a moment of celebration, of peace, of contentment. I asked him about his childhood. He told me that his father was a strict man, a hard worker, who always wanted the best for his children. But he had a favorite phrase, "Michael, I'm disappointed in you. You're capable of more than this." Michael heard this phrase after getting an A on a test, after finishing second place in a competition, after anything that wasn't absolute perfection. And what did he do with it? He spent his entire life trying not to disappoint. Each promotion, each degree, each specialization was an attempt to finally prove that he wasn't a disappointment, that he was good enough, that his father could finally look at him with pride. But his father had already passed away 10 years ago, and the voice continued inside Michael's head, repeating, "You can do more. That's not enough. I'm disappointed in you." That's the first word I saw, the first wound, the wound of never being good enough. And now, let's get to the second. This one is even more common and even more devastating because it attacks directly the ability to feel. The phrase is "Bitte stop crying," or its variations, "Stop being so dramatic. It's not that big of a deal. Now suck it up. Man up. Big girls don't cry. I'll give you something to cry about." It seems like a way to calm the child down, to teach them to be strong, to prepare them for a world that won't accept weakness. Many parents say these words with the best intentions. But look at what happens in the psyche. A child cries because they feel something. Crying is the expression of an emotion: sadness, fear, frustration, pain. The child doesn't yet have the words for everything they feel, so they cry. It's natural, it's healthy, it's human. When a parent says, "Stop crying," the message the child receives is, "What you're feeling is not valid. Your emotion is wrong. You shouldn't be feeling what you're feeling." And what does the child do? They learn to suppress it, to hide it, to pretend they don't feel. Jung described this as amputation of the feeling function. The child literally cuts off access to a part of themselves, the part that feels, the part that is vulnerable, the part that needs nurturing. And this amputation has devastating consequences. Adults who learned "Stop crying" often can't identify what they're feeling. They know something is wrong, that there's a discomfort, a tension, but they can't name it. They can't access it. The door to the emotional world was locked in childhood, and the key was thrown away. I met a woman named Ashley, 35 years older, a businesswoman, successful by any external measure. But she came to see me because her relationships always ended the same way. Her partners said she was cold, distant, inaccessible, that it was like trying to hug a wall. Ashley didn't understand. She wanted connection. She wanted intimacy. But when it came time to open up, to show vulnerability, something would freeze up, a wall would go up, and she couldn't get through it. I asked her about her childhood. Ashley's father was a practical man. Emotions for him were a waste of time, weakness. Whenever Ashley cried or showed any strong emotion, her father would say, "Cut it out. Don't be such a baby. Solve the problem instead of crying." Ashley learned the lesson so well that she couldn't unlearn it. The feeling function was atrophied, almost dead, and relationships died along with it. This is the second word, the second wound, the wound of not being able to feel. And now the third, perhaps the most insidious of all. The phrase is, "Why can't you be like," complete with any name, the brother and the sister, the cousin, the neighbor's kid, the classmate, anyone that the parents consider the model that the child should follow. Why can't you be organized like your brother Kevin? Why can't you get grades like Amanda? Why can't you be calm like Mrs. Johnson's son? It seems like a way to motivate, to give an example, to show that it's possible to be better. After all, if the other person can do it, you should be able to as well. But look at the real message that the child receives. Who you are is not acceptable. You should be someone else. The ideal is the other person. You are the wrong version. This creates what Carl Jung called a negative identification. The child doesn't learn who they are. They learn who they should be but aren't. Their identity is built in opposition to a model they never asked for, and probably don't even know that well. And the worst part, This comparison never ends because there will always be someone who seems better at something. The ideal model is a moving target, unattainable. The child, and later the adult, spends their life chasing a version of themselves that was never theirs. I met a man named David, 32 years old, worked at a tech company, competent, but he kept changing jobs, changing cities, changing relationships. Nothing ever seemed right. He always thought there was something better somewhere else, that he was in the wrong place, being the wrong person. I asked him about his childhood. David was the second son. The older brother was the model, athletic, popular, good grades. Everything David did was compared and found lacking. Why can't you be like Brandon? It was the soundtrack of his childhood. And now, 30 years later, David was still comparing, not just with his brother anymore, but with everyone, co-workers, friends of friends, people on the internet. Anyone seemed to be living the right life, while he was always in the wrong one. This is the third word, the third wound, the wound of never being who you should be. Now pay attention, because this is fundamental. These three phrases: I'm disappointed in you. Stop crying. Why can't you be like? They rarely appear alone. They usually come together. They complement each other. They reinforce each other. The child learns, I am a disappointment because I feel too much and because I'm not like the model I should be. And this triple message becomes the basis of what Carl Jung called a nuclear complex, a central psychic structure around which the entire personality is organized. The nuclear complex created by these words works like this. The child develops a false self, a mask that tries not to disappoint, that doesn't show emotions, that imitates the approved model, while the true self stays hidden, ashamed, convinced that if it appears it will be rejected. And this false self is exhausting, because you're always acting, always performing, always trying to be what you're not in order to be accepted. And the irony is that the more you perform, the less accepted you feel, because deep down you know it's not you they're accepting, it's the mask. I met a woman named Jennifer, 40 years old, a psychologist herself. She came to me because she was exhausted, deep burnout. She told me, I spend the day helping other people be authentic, and when I get home, I realize I have no idea who I really am. Jennifer had heard the three phrases, all of them, repeatedly, and she had built a whole life around the false self, the competent psychologist, the available friend, the perfect daughter. But behind all these masks, there was no one. The true self had disappeared so long ago that she didn't even remember what it was like. This is what these words do. They don't destroy the child from the outside. They teach the child to destroy themselves from the inside, to reject who they are, to hide what they feel, to chase who they'll never be, and the cycle continues. Because adults who grew up hearing these words often repeat them to their own children, not out of malice, but because it's the only language they know. And so the wounds pass from generation to generation, infinitely. But hold on, because I haven't told you the most important part yet. Carl Jung didn't just identify the problem. He showed the path to healing, and the path begins with recognition. Most people who carry these wounds don't know they carry them. They think the critical voice inside them is their own voice, that the inability to feel is just their personality, that the constant comparison is just healthy ambition. The first step is to realize that voice is not mine. That voice was installed. That voice is an echo of the past that continues to reverberate in the present. This seems simple, but it's revolutionary. When you realize that the critical voice isn't you, you gain distance. You can observe without being completely controlled. You can even question it. Is this true? Or is this just what I was taught to believe? And here's something that Carl Jung discovered about how these words work in the brain. Every time a child hears one of these phrases, they don't just process the meaning. They store along with it all the emotional charge of the moment, the tone of voice of the father, the expression of disappointment on the mother's face, the feeling of shrinking inside, of wanting to disappear. This creates what Carl Jung called a complex, a constellation of memories, emotions, and beliefs grouped around a central theme. In the case of these three phrases, the theme is, I am not acceptable as I am, and the complex has a life of its own. Every time something in the present remotely resembles the original situation, the complex is activated. You might be in a work meeting. The boss makes a criticism, nothing serious, a normal professional feedback. But suddenly you feel that familiar sensation, shrinking inside, wanting to disappear. The 7-year-old who heard, I'm disappointed in you, has just woken up inside you. And you react, not as an adult, but as a wounded child, defensive, or paralyzed, or aggressive. Anything but a response proportional to the real situation. This happens dozens of times a day, in meetings, in relationships, in casual conversations. The complex is always alert, looking for any trigger that resembles the original wound, and when it finds it, it takes control. Carl Jung said that when you are possessed by a complex, you don't have a complex. The complex has you. This is the invisible prison that these three words build, a prison where you are constantly reacting to the past while you think you are living in the present. But there is a way out, and the way out begins exactly where we are now, with awareness, with recognition, with the courage to look inside and see, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm doing. This is not me. This is the complex. This is the voice of the past. That moment of recognition is the first step toward freedom. But there's more. And before I continue, I need to tell you about something you might be feeling right now. If you recognize those three phrases, if you remembered the tone of voice, if you felt that pang in your chest, that's not weakness, that's recognition. That's the child inside you, finally being seen. Many people spend their entire lives running from this recognition. It's easier to believe that you're just like that you've always been cold, that you've always been a perfectionist, that you've always been insecure, than to admit that these characteristics were installed by people who were supposed to protect you. But the truth is, recognizing the wound is the only path to healing it. Carl Jung used to say, what doesn't become conscious manifests in our lives as destiny. As long as you don't look at these words and at their impact, they will continue controlling your choices, your relationships, your relationship with yourself. So if it's hurting, good. It means you're alive. It means there's still something to heal. Now, let's continue, because you need to understand not only how these words destroyed you, but how you can rebuild what was destroyed. The reconstruction process that Carl Jung developed has 4 stages, and each one of them attacks a different layer of the damage caused by those 3 words. The first stage is what Carl Jung called identification of the introjected voice. Remember I said that the child swallows the parent's evaluation. The critical voice inside you seems like yours. But it's not. It's a copy of the father's or mother's voice, installed so early that you can't distinguish it. The exercise is simple, but powerful. Every time you hear the critical voice inside your head, stop and ask, whose voice is this? Really? Does this sound like something my dad would say? Does this sound like something my mom would say? Is this my real opinion about myself? Or is it an inherited opinion? At first, this seems strange. After all, you've spent your entire life thinking these thoughts were yours. But with practice, you start to realize, this voice that says nothing I do is enough. It has my dad's tone. This voice that says I shouldn't feel this way. So it sounds exactly like my mom. And when you make that separation, when you realize that the voice is theirs and not yours, something magical happens. You gain space. You can look at the voice from the outside instead of being controlled by it from the inside. The second stage uses what Carl Jung called confrontation with the shadow. All three of these phrases made you reject parts of yourself. I'm disappointed in you made you reject the part of you that fails. Stop crying made you reject the part of you that feels. Why can't you be like made you reject the part of you that is unique. These rejected parts don't disappear. They go to what Carl Jung called the shadow, an area of the psyche where we keep everything that we can't accept in ourselves. And the shadow has power. The more you deny a part of yourself, the more it strengthens in the depths, and it finds ways to manifest in dreams, in slips of the tongue, in moments where you act in ways you don't understand. And then you ask yourself, where did that come from? The confrontation with the shadow is the process of looking at these rejected parts and saying, you exist, you are part of me. I don't need to hide you anymore. This is deeply uncomfortable because it means accepting that you fail sometimes, that you feel intense things, that you're different from the models that were imposed on you. But it's exactly this acceptance that liberates Michael. That doctor who never felt satisfaction had to confront the part of him that fails. He had to accept that no human being is perfect, that disappointing others sometimes is part of existing, that he could be excellent and still make mistakes, without that defining his entire worth. Ashley, that businesswoman who couldn't connect, had to confront the part of her that feels. She had to relearn to cry, to allow herself vulnerability, to understand that emotions are not weakness. They are information. They are life. Justin, the one who lived comparing himself to others, had to confront the part of him that is unique. He had to accept that his way of being is not inferior to anyone. It's different, and that difference doesn't need to be corrected. The third stage is what Carl Jung called reparenting. This is perhaps the strangest for those who have never heard of it, but it's deeply transformative. The idea is simple. If your parents' words created a destructive inner voice, you can create a new voice, a voice that says what your parents should have said, but didn't. Instead of, I'm disappointed in you, the new voice says, you're trying hard, and that matters. Instead of stop crying, the new voice says, it's okay to feel what you're feeling. Instead of, why can't you be like, the new voice says, you don't need to be like anyone. You being you is enough. It sounds silly. It sounds like cheap self-help. But modern neuroscience confirms what Carl Jung intuited a century ago. The brain is plastic. It can be reprogrammed. If destructive voices created neural pathways of self-deprecation, constructive voices can create new pathways of self-acceptance. The trick is consistency. Once doesn't change anything, but repeated day after day. Whenever the old voice appears, counter it with the new voice, little by little. The pathways change, the programming alters, and the critical voice loses strength. It doesn't disappear completely. It will probably be there forever, on some level. But it stops being the only voice and stops being the dominant voice, becomes one among many, and you gain the power to choose which one to listen to. Now, pay close attention. You are receiving now information that normally takes years of therapy to access. Information based on decades of work by Carl Jung, applied in real cases, tested on thousands of people. This content exists because someone believes that these three words have destroyed too many lives. That children who heard, I'm disappointed in you, and stop crying, and why can't you be like, deserve to understand what happened to them and find a way back to themselves. The super thanks button down there, the one with the golden heart. It's not just financial support. It's you saying, this truth about toxic words needs to continue being revealed. And you joining a movement of people who are choosing to speak differently, with their children, with others, with themselves. When you click on that heart, you're not just supporting a channel, you're voting for a world where parents think before they speak, where children grow up hearing, "You are enough," where the cycle of destructive words finally breaks. But let's continue, because we still have the fourth step, and it's fundamental. The fourth step is what Carl Jung called integration. The previous three steps are about undoing the damage, identifying the voice, confronting the shadow, reparenting. But integration is about building something new, something that never existed before. Integration means becoming whole. It means bringing together all the parts of you, the accepted and the rejected, the ones your parents approved of and the ones they condemned. It means stopping being warring fragments and becoming a complete person, a person who can fail without destroying themselves, who can feel without drowning, who can be different without diminishing themselves. This doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, a journey. That can take months or years, depending on the depth of the wounds, but the most important thing is that it's possible. Let me tell you what happened with Michael, Ashley, and Brandon. Michael, after 2 years working on these issues, achieved something that seemed impossible. He finished a project at work, and instead of immediately looking for the next one, he stopped. He felt satisfaction. For even a few minutes, he experienced the feeling of being enough. The voice of his father still appears sometimes. "You can do more." But Michael can now respond, "I can. But now I choose to celebrate what I've already done." Ashley, after a year and a half, managed to cry for the first time in decades. It seems small, but for her it was a revolution. The door that had been locked since childhood finally opened. And with it came all the emotions that were trapped. The sadness, the anger, but also the joy, the love, the connection she had been searching for. Her latest relationship is lasting, not because she found the perfect person, but because she can finally be present, vulnerable, real. Brandon, after a year, stopped changing jobs, not because he found the perfect job, but because he realized that the problem was never the job. The problem was the constant comparison that made any place seem wrong. He still compares himself sometimes. Old habits are persistent, but now he can catch himself in the act and ask himself, "Is this me? Or is this the voice of my dad wanting me to be like Jacob?" Usually it's the voice of his dad, and Brandon can now ignore it. That's integration. It's not becoming perfect. It's becoming whole, capable of living with imperfections, with emotions, with uniqueness, without it being a reason for shame. Now I need to talk about something crucial. Children, if you have children, or plan to have them, or have contact with children in any way, this part is especially important. The cycle of the 3 words only breaks if someone consciously chooses to speak differently. This doesn't mean you'll never make mistakes. You will. All parents make mistakes, but there's a difference between making mistakes occasionally and installing a destructive programming. The difference is in the intention, in the frequency, and in the reparation. If you said something you regretted, if you realized you spoke one of the 3 phrases, you can go back. You can say, "What I said earlier, I shouldn't have said. You don't disappoint me. Your learning shows and mistakes are part of learning." Or, "I'm sorry I told you to stop crying. Your feelings are important. I'm here to listen." Or, "I shouldn't have compared you to anyone. You don't need to be like your brother. You being you is perfect." These reparations don't erase what was said, but they teach something crucial to the child. That adults also make mistakes. That mistakes can be recognized and corrected. That relationships are more important than being right. And the child learns. If my parents can admit mistakes, and I can too. If my parents can apologize, I can too. If my parents can change, I can too. That's breaking the cycle. Not perfectly, but consciously. I know this video stirred up deep things. I know. Because it stirs me every time I talk about it. These 3 words are universal. They cross cultures, gang social classes, generations, and they need to be named in order to be healed. Now I want to hear from you. Which of the 3 phrases did you hear the most in childhood? I'm disappointed in you. Stop crying. Why can't you be like? Or maybe a variation that I didn't mention. But that carried the same message. Write it in the comments, sir. Tell us what phrase marked you the most. Because when you name the wound, you start to take it out of the dark. And when you see that thousands of other people heard the same thing, you understand that it wasn't true. It was just a phrase, repeated by parents who didn't know the damage they were causing. Time. I'm disappointed in you. Versus time. Stop crying. Versus time. Why aren't you like? What phrase most shaped who you are today? Comment below. And if you're a parent, if you realize that you've said some of these phrases, don't condemn yourself. You probably heard the same words when you were a child. You were just repeating what you knew. But now you know. And knowing changes everything. From now on, you can choose differently. You can speak differently. You can be the father or mother you needed to have. And that's it. That's breaking the cycle. That's generational healing. That's transforming suffering into wisdom. The 3 words that destroyed you don't have to destroy your children. You can be the turning point, the generation that stops, that looks back, that understands, and that decides to do differently. The child inside you, the one who heard those words, the one who swallowed them as truth, the one who built an identity around them, that child is still there, waiting. You can go to her now, in your imagination, in your heart, and say the words she needed to hear. You don't disappoint me. You could never disappoint me, because you are exactly who you should be. You can cry, you can feel, you can be vulnerable. I'm here, I won't leave. You don't need to be like anyone. You being you is more than enough. It's all I ever wanted. Say these words, Mule, to yourself, as many times as necessary, until they start to replace the old ones, until the critical voice loses strength, until you finally feel at home within yourself. 3 words destroyed. Another 3 can rebuild. You are enough. Always were.